Hi everybody, I'm Tawney.
I'm Allana.
And we are here with PeepShow Toys, and we want to talk about what is sex positivity really? Because it's such a broad kind of, what is it? What is sex positivity? Why is it important? The mysteries of the universe. So we have some questions that we're going to answer and kind of talk about with you, and it's going to be really fun, so hang tight. Okay, so first we'll talk about how, if you feel comfortable answering this, how does normalizing sex help everyone?
How does it not help everyone?
I know, right? Yeah. Where does it stop? Yeah.
I mean, I think, obviously, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, because it's not obvious to everyone. Sex is normal and natural and healthy as long as you're engaging in it in a healthy way and you're aware of your own boundaries.
It's treated like such a taboo thing in general, and I feel like when you're sex positive and you're talking to someone, it like creates that comfortable space like where they can talk about it. Because I mean, how many times have you talked to somebody and brought up something to do with sex and they'll say something along the lines of like, oh, it's so nice to be able to talk about this, or I have questions. Yeah,
I feel like sex positivity is the answer in terms of healing sexual shame.
Yeah,
for everyone.
Oh yeah, it's super important. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about some misconceptions about sex positivity. So I feel like some misconceptions are that this is kind of a misconception, kind of not. I feel like there's a lot of slut shaming when it comes to sex positivity. I feel like some people view sex positivity as like a negative thing because it means that you're free or you're, sleeping with a bunch of people or whatever. And I feel like the point of sex positivity is that who cares? Because you should be able to go out and do that, and as long as you're safe and you're, and your heart is not being ripped apart and you're not, hurting yourself with your exposure to sex, then it's not negative. But I feel like people put that negative connotation on it, like, oh, you're sex positive, it means that you're not being safe and you're, going crazy and wild. And I'm not sure if you've heard any other, kind of misconceptions.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think people definitely very often think of sex positivity as being inherently meaning that you're just inherently meaning everyone being really slutty and super openly sexual and open about all their sexual stuff. People tend to think that sex positivity, I don't know, I guess it's like one extreme or another. Like, people tend to think that, like, sex positivity means being totally overtly sexual or having to be, or like, one person can't be totally modest and also be like sexually positive, what I mean?
Right.
Or that like sex positivity means that like all sex is good and acceptable, I guess, when that's not
that there's no like
case.
Limits or like, things that
everything's on a spectrum.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Everyone has their own personal what sex positivity means to them and like what
So because everybody kind of has their own way of thinking about sex positivity, what are things that are not sex positive? Some examples of things like sexually that aren't. Like, for instance, I would say that it is not sex positive to have consistent, unprotected sex with tons of different partners that have not been tested.
Yeah.
I don't think that's sex positivity. I think that's sexual negligence.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's lack of common sense sexually. I think that, that kind of went along the lines of what some people would consider sex positivity. And I believe it is one of the exact definitions of not being educated on sex, I think is not sex positivity. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like, sex positivity is not ignoring your boundaries or the boundaries of others. Sex positivity is not engaging in dangerous situations.
Yes.
Sex positivity is not, like, not wearing condoms or not getting, it's like sex positivity inherently has to involve sex education.
Yes, yeah, you have to know what you're doing in sex and understand that, there are limits, there are things you need to discuss with a partner, and being mature enough to understand that and then also apply it, I think, is like sex positivity. Mm-hmm. So, and then I think it's important to also have us talk about why we should keep talking about it. why we should keep bringing up sex positivity with people. I mean, besides kind of what we mentioned before with you never know who's got questions. And if you're like providing that kind of comfortable space, I think a lot more people will come forth and have questions that, you know, you can answer, or questions that they finally feel confident asking and that they're not accepting as a normal thing in their life. And yeah, I mean, I think that's why I think it's important to do it. I think that people need to understand that if they don't feel like something's okay sexually, that they should be able to talk about it, and it's not taboo, and it's not, and education is really important. Knowing your limits is important.
Totally. Yeah. Like, you know, in the United States, we still have the majority of the country teaching abstinence, education and stuff. We don't have proper sex education. We don't have proper consent or boundary education literally anywhere for the most part. And I mean, you know, other places in the world really perceive America as being like super sexually liberal, but the reality is that we are like in deep sexual repression. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Like for me, like specifically, like education is so important. It's so important. So like being positive, validating, eliminating shame, like educating, it's so important.
Talk to your friends. Talk to your family.
Talk about sex. It's okay.
Say it. And then in regards to talking with friends and family, here's some advice for dealing with judgmental people. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you is that much like with your parents. So when you're growing up, I feel like your parents aren't just going to come out and tell you all the terrible things they've done growing up. They're not going to. But they're still going to tell you not to do them. So you're going to come across people that are very judgmental, that are going to be like, you can't talk like that. You can't talk about these things. That's inappropriate. It doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't done it themselves. It just means that somehow, whether it's morally, whether it's religion, whether it's whatever, they have a reason to believe that it is immoral to talk about it. So I think it's important to understand that no matter how people treat you, sex is normal. Yeah. Period. They are doing it, or have more than likely done it. They have done some things in their life that they're not going to admit to you, and it is not up to you to pry it from them, but it is up to you to understand that just because they're treating it like it's not normal does not mean that they aren't doing it, and that it isn't normal, and that shouldn't stop you from talking about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. How would you deal with people that are kind of, you know, like
I'm glad that you mentioned morals, because morals are not objective. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point if you're going to be discussing, or even, hopefully not, but even arguing about sex positivity and being open to those kinds of things to someone, is that like what might be right for them and their beliefs and their morals. Yeah. Does not have to be right to you. For you, it truly doesn't. No. And that's really like the underlining thing for me.
That's why it's there.
It's morals. Okay, like they don't have to be, like, you being sexual and sexually open doesn't mean they have to be. That's not, you know, that's like, you're allowed to do that for yourself. And obviously a lot of people will have problems with that, especially if they're your family. Right. And they feel like they have a right. But that's not how it works.
I also feel like the same sort of people that will completely alienate you based on the things that you're saying are also the same people that might potentially do it for political beliefs, or just kind of your own religious beliefs. And you should also understand that they might come at you for a great many things. It might not just be about sex. It might just be that they are not okay with differing opinions. Yeah. And you're always going to come across someone who has a different opinion than you. Yeah, it doesn't
set on disagreeing.
It doesn't mean that you can't still be a Republican or a Democrat because of whatever they're doing. It just means that simply they disagree with you, and you do not have to stop speaking your sex positivity or speaking your beliefs just because one person disagrees. I understand that it's probably a bit more tender because it's sex, and so you feel maybe a bit more like, are they ashamed of me? Because there is that kind of press of shame, but stand to your guns. Keep talking about it. Who knows, maybe a year down the road they'll call you up with a question because they know they can come to you. People change all the time.
Totally. I wanted to say that too. Like you said, like that they might be like shaming you, but it's something that they might have still done themselves. Right? Yes, like, so like maybe they hadn't ever done it themselves, but I bet they probably had thoughts. Or I bet they had other sexual thoughts that they're ashamed of and they didn't admit to. Whatever the reason is, whether or not you're seeing the evidence of it in that moment, you being open is going to affect them.
Right. They're going to understand
it. It's going to encourage them, even if they don't seem that way at all in the moment, it's going to encourage them to be more open in some way.
100%. So don't shelter yourself. Speak it loud, speak it proud, educate yourself. Thank you so much for coming along and chatting about sex positivity with us. Goodbye.